So welcome. I hope that my satellite service will keep running. They seem to arbitrarily turn it off. And it was turned off at some point this morning. I attribute some sort of supervision to its being turned off, which is like the attribution of a creator to what happens, a controller to events, that there's some mindful controller to what happens, a creator God, a supervisor. And the word, I forget what the word is in Tibetan, but the word is supervisor. And in fact, among Tibetans, I remember someone saying that if a high Lama has a headache, that's blamed on a protector deity. So again, it's blamed on a, see, there's a, there's a impulse within human beings to blame some supervising authority above, when you don't know when figuring out the specific cause is too difficult among some Tibetans. So you see, I'm blaming the satellite company for turning off my internet, whereas it just might be cloud cover or some other minor factor. Yes. So here we are. So we're on number 5, the features of the 3 mysteries, the 3 secrecies. Mysteries could mean, we just plain couldn't figure them out. Secrecies maybe could be a better translation. I don't know which to choose. In any case, there's secrecies, secrets or mysteries to those who are not on the Buddha level. They're not secret to Buddhas. They're not mysteries to Buddhas. I'm blocking a tanka. Last time I had a picture of Khetsun right here. And I must have taken the picture down and put it somewhere. But when I left. Do you know where it is? Maybe you can see it around the room and I just can't see it. It's a mystery to me. Sometimes things are a mystery even when they're right in front of you. I've been looking around the room like this. I probably laid it down somewhere. Okay. So, Noam Belden's word commentary on the root text. Those having the lot, those having the fortune Now this is not a spurious fortune. That means those who have the karma, those who've previously accumulated karma, such that you experience and see these phenomena. So that means you have the lot, the fortune. See the sport of the three inconceivable mysteries. Well, they're not inconceivable to Buddhas, but inconceivable to people like us, of exalted body, speech, and mind, pervading all of the stable and the moving. The stable are, things like, the environment, and the moving are sentient beings. But of course, sentient beings sometimes can sit still, and the environment actually is always moving. Always. Even the so-called very stable mountains are always in movement. But you can understand why it's called stable and moving. So, as is explained a few times, beginning here, above and below, a Buddha can transform a moment into an aeon, and an aeon into a moment. So you see, time is flexible. And all of the environment can be placed, all of the stable and the moving, all of this huge array can be placed in a single hair pore. One tiny hair pore. The whole cosmos can be placed inside it without changing the size of the cosmos or the size of the hair pore. And this is illustrated usually, Lamas usually illustrate it by, you take a spoonful of water and it can reflect the whole sky. You can see the whole sky in the reflection, or a tiny drop. Just take a tiny drop and you can see the whole sky. And you can do that without changing, the size of the drop or the size of the sky. In a single hair pore, they are not crowded, and it says here like space, and probably it should say like the sky. The word for sky and space are the same. I believe in the word version of this, I've already changed space to like the sky. And that means when sky is reflected in a pond or in a drop of water, the holes of the hair pores do not become larger, and the stable and moving do not become smaller. So then it tells you, Jam-yang-shay-ba tells you where to look for these teachings in Sutra, and in Bhava Viveka, and in Maitreya's Sublime Continuum, the Uttara Tantra. 2 paragraphs down, you get the repetition. And the repetition's helpful. Similarly, a Buddha can transform a moment into an aeon, and an aeon into a moment. And as I said to Noan Lengen, well, his picture is over there now. It's a big picture, very nice. Well, then we're in the midst of the Vietnam War. Well, then a Buddha could get rid of the Vietnam War like that, and he said yes. And I was really pissed off. Because obviously the Vietnam War was still raging. And even though a Buddha can set all world systems into a single minute particle or a single hair pore, their respective sizes are not changed. And as Jam-yang-shay-ba says, and I've brought this up before, but something like a yogi's perspective destroys all worldly perspectives. All worldly conventions. And so you can answer back, well then, why are we Gelugpas so much studying worldly conventions? Why don't we study yogis' perspectives? You sort of want to shout that back. And that's why studying this section is so important. And I presume that the answer is we're stuck in this perspective and we have to work our way out of it using inference and so forth from within this perspective. And I would add on top of that, but we shouldn't think that this is the only perspective. The ordinary worldly perspective. And so I imagine that one of the helps to be reaped from studying Nyingma is that so much of it is framed from the Buddha perspective, so that you're reminded and pulled into that perspective. Reminded. And not left, not ending up thinking of Buddhas, as Mipam Gyatsho put it, just a better off ordinary person. Maybe, like living in a gated community, which would be, the mandala. It's got four gates. And a tremendous advantage in reading this presentation of Buddhahood that is very full a Gelugpa presentation will be to go back now and read a very full Nyingma perspective and see, well now, what is Mipam Gyatsho driving at? What's extra over there in Nyingma? There's something that he's saying is extra. There's some extra perspective. And I was just reading now, and you know, there's something, what is the else? And I think we have to assume that he's well aware of all of what we're reading. It's just we can't be gulled into thinking that he's not aware of everything that we're reading. I think we have to grant him this. And anyway, we're soon to get back to it. Number 6, and I don't know why I said infiniteness. Infinity would be the word in English. Infinity of the qualities of the powers. So then there's a list of the 10 powers. Which are easy enough to read, which the first 6 have to do with piercing the armor-like non-afflictive ignorance, the obstructions to omniscience. And it's, as a translator, I can say it's very helpful to have been forced to slow down and translate all of these. Otherwise you can think blah 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 and not slow down and think about all of these. And especially in the case of Maitreya's text, to slow down and be forced with some of the difficult words to pause over all of them, try to figure out what they mean, and thereby, taste. Now, some of these, like in the list, if you pass down to Bhava Viveka's Blaze of Reasoning, and the Sutra of Tens of a One Gone Thus. List of tens. So you go to number 3. Buddha's 10 non-passings beyond time. It's almost upsetting because you just get the title of the list. What are they? And so as the translator, you have to translate the titles of lists. But at least I got the 10 the titles. The 30 titles. Whereas you as readers can go, oh, these are just titles, and pass down to the next paragraph. Okay, I'm just kidding. But maybe as a translator you get maybe fed up. I don't know. But I don't know this. Maybe I'm just talking myself into the value of having translated it. Then number 7, uninterrupted inconceivable activities. That's why I colored these, so that you wouldn't get fed up reading them. You could just pass your eyes over them. Spontaneous activities, whatever will tame, are displayed forever. You notice forever. Whereas it often says, you see, as Non-Buddhist in the last line here, displayed forever until the end of cyclic existence. But as we've noted, cyclic existence never ends. And it's a little bit upsetting, you know, if Buddhas are going to have emanation bodies forever. You see, there'd be no reason for Buddhas to have emanation bodies if there were no beings still in cyclic existence. So doesn't it seem very trifling to decide that there would always be some beings left in cyclic existence just because Buddhas had to have emanation bodies? I mean, give me a break. That's sort of backwards reasoning. Now, if you said sentient beings are infinite, but, you know, infinite, I mean, endless. The number of sentient beings is endless. I mean, even endless. Never mind all the talk about what does infinite mean. Well, it seems trifling, backwards reasoning. Yeah. So here we are, back to the analysis of fundamental mind. Yes. So as His Holiness says, you've got only two choices. Things are either inherently established or dependent upon conceptuality. And when you search for objects and don't find them, the only choice that's left is that they are dependent upon conceptuality. But that doesn't mean that you can posit the conceptuality, that you can find the conceptuality that posits each and every object. Therefore, when the noumenon of the mind, back to analysis of fundamental mind, when the noumenon of the mind, the great completeness, so the great completeness is identified as the noumenon of the mind itself. Now, from one point of view, the great completeness can be identified as the noumenon of the mind. And, you know, I have very expansively included the path of release and the path of method in the path of the great completeness. And I want to ask all of us as we read through this book, either privately reading through the whole thing, or as we slowly read through it over the next 20 years, whether I'm correct in my expansive inclusion of both the path of release and the path of method in the path of the great completeness, or if we are not so strict in the vocabulary, in the great completeness. You see, I think some people would want to restrict the great completeness just to the path of release. But I think when you read this text and how Mipam Gyatsho takes in his more expansive usage of the term the great completeness, I think he's including both the path of method and the path of release, which is the path of release, no doubt, is the more profound mode of the great completeness, no doubt. But I think many would like to just restrict the term the great completeness to the path of release. Here, the noumenon of the mind is being identified as the great completeness, which is very restrictive, is realized. It is established as a definitive Buddha, primordially released in the non-duality of cyclic existence and in nirvana. That path does not rely on any path having signs. Now, Khetsun Sangpo identified signs as having objects of observation. And Mipam Gyatsho identifies having signs, which might be, I use maybe I use the modern vocabulary. What's modern nowadays? Having constructs, which may be more in accord with Mipam Gyatsho's binding the winds in the pot-like breath control meditation. Doing activities like holding your breath. And it's, let's see, I think I could. Okay. It's called, anyway, I'll explain it. Binding the winds means binding the breath, holding the breath. And it's called pot-like because you're pulling up. I'm holding my hands down here, and you're pulling up the lower winds, and pulling down the upper winds into something like a jar or a pot. And the aim is to draw the winds in the left and right channels into the central channel. For instance, at Yale University, when Dr. Dundan went there, there was, which I mentioned earlier, there was a doctor who, this just happened to be mentioned when we were walking in a hall, who couldn't defecate. And so Dr. Dundan mentioned that this was due to the lower winds having moved up, I believe he said into the kidneys, but anyway, having moved up and being lodged upward, so they couldn't, the downward voiding winds, technical, being moving upward, having moved upward and been lodged, and they were incapable of moving downward. And Ngawang Langden, who was abbot of a tantric college in Lhasa, mentioned to me that there were many instances of persons who did this pot-like meditation and who had become unable to defecate. So, who succeeded, but over-succeeded. So they're pulling upwards the downward voiding wind, and he didn't say anything about these ones that control, like spitting and so forth. So, in other words, you're dealing with bodily functions. These are currents of energy, people usually say, translators usually say, but they are movements of air, movements of wind, air. So that's the pot-like being held here. So this is an important part of the Guhya Samaja meditation in order to cause the winds to enter the central channel, and at important places in the body to meditate there, and eventually at the heart, and by making the winds enter the central channel and to enter the center of these important places in the central channel, to experience the deeper levels of mind and eventually the fundamental innate mind of clear light. And at the heart, again, when people attempt to cause the airs, or whatever way one wants to translate it, the winds to enter, the problem that's produced is anxiety. What's the general word? There's a... Huh?
Lung.
Yeah, it's called lung, but the English word, it's not, there's another word besides anxiety. It's, people become rattled when it's not done right. And this happens a lot. Happens a lot to scholars. And they overwork and become excitable, nervous. Oh, it's a word like nervous. Huh? It's a common word. Huh? Stress, but another word? It's a word I often forget. It's why you have to laugh a lot. Ha 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 ha. Really. And you have to become attuned to, noticing it and then not driving yourself. There's a scholar that I know. Everybody says, "Oh, he's got lung." He's got lung. Anyway, I'll write it down. It's anyway, yeah. So. It's great in Dzogchen, or do people say, it's not needed. These activities aren't needed. I'm looking at the clock. So, if you're successful at quieting these winds, withdrawing them, dissolving them, having them enter the central channel, abiding in the central channel, and dissolving in the central channel, according to the Guhya Samaja system, then the subtler, right? We talked a lot about the subtler levels of mind will manifest. And you'll end up with the fundamental innate mind of clear light dawning. Now this is being called a minor or trifling clear light. In Mipam Gyatsho is calling the fundamental innate mind of clear light a trifling clear light. Upon the stoppage of coarse conceptions and so on. The mind of vivid white appearance, red or orange, increase of appearance, the mind of vivid black near attainment, and the fundamental innate mind of clear light. These relative to the Yingta Yeshe Nisume, the non-dual expanse and pristine wisdom are minor, trifling. Okay? And, this is like the various schools of tenets being superior to the lower ones. So a claim is being made here. So we have the coarse conceptions level, the stoppage of those, and then the unfolding in the Guhya Samaja system, and then down to the fundamental innate mind of clear light, and then a claim is being made of something deeper than that. Thus, so you've got to do the techniques like the binding of the winds, and then the entry of the winds into the central channel, the abiding of them there. The winds have to stay there, and they have to dissolve there, and you can't have any problems. And there's, yoga, there's physical yoga, things like to prevent various problems and so forth. And, there's a physical yoga that goes with it to make sure you don't develop problems and dissolution, and the unfolding of these deeper levels of mind, or you can practice Dzogchen, and your Lama will point out help you to notice something that you can really latch onto and deepen, that get used to, and conceptuality will, Mipam Gyatsho says this, will lessen, and it's said in the Dalai Lama's book, will lessen as you pay more and more attention to this. And it will put you in a deeper place than these many constructive activities. So is the claim. And as it's said about Milarepa, he couldn't do this easier way. He went he did it the longer way, the path of method. Poor guy. So I'm trying to give you I put on my Dzogchen hat and spoke it from that perspective. Of course, if you think, I've got the real, some practitioner thinks I've got the real easy way, then one should listen to the many times that His Holiness says, it's not easy. By way of the 10 natures, and I was going to take a moment, I already forgot what the 10 natures are, but if you look it up, it appeared earlier. Okay, so now we're back to, it says the 10 grounds. Khetsun Sangpo identifies it right here. Okay, that's where we are. Pretty cool, huh? We're back exploring this perspective. Okay, see you then. And that it appears our supervising deity did not at the internet company did not dissolve us. We should thank the supervisor. Okay. See you around. Bye.